Welcome to Inside Auto Podcast, where we feature everyone and anyone you'd want to talk to in and out of the automotive industry.
Ilana Shabtay here, host of Inside Auto Podcast, where we interview top dealers, GMs, marketers, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders in and out of the automotive industry. Before we introduce today's guest and today's podcast, this episode is sponsored by AutoLeadstar.com. The AutoLeadstar platform is built on a technology so powerful, it allows you to market, sell, and service cars as you would in the real world at scale and online, making one-to-one matches between shoppers and inventory. AutoLeadstar is the only platform that is powered by scale, speed, and specificity to change the way dealers do marketing today. Excited about today's podcast, and apologies if my audio isn't as good as usual because I am working from home during the pandemic that never ends. But we have with us here Dr. Jeremy Wise with Rise 25. Hi, Jeremy.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
I'm excited because, we're going to be talking and doing a year in review, which are some of the guests, the big lessons you've learned over the past year. And a lot is to be learned here. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off with Steve Shannon and, marketing innovation, the future of automotive ecosystem. You talked about with Steve Shannon. And, one of the things that stuck out about this is you talked about marketing efforts. I'd love for you to just expand on that a little bit.
Yeah.
And if people are watching the video, if you're listening to the audio, if you're watching the video, you'll see on the screen the interview. And so you can kind of follow along a little bit with some of the bullets. So go ahead with marketing efforts.
Yeah. So Steve was super eye-opening because he explained a little bit about the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 structure. He worked on the tier 1 level at an automotive dealership, but it was really obvious from the conversation that while dealers have the OEM support for marketing efforts, meaning of course manufacturers are supporting boosting certain inventory and specials, it's really important for on a tier 3 level, so on the actual dealer level, that they have the right marketing efforts to push out their own specials, their own incentives, their own inventory. So that was something he talked a lot about, and that's also just been a theme throughout the year. Making sure that you're actually implementing best practices and you have the infrastructure at your dealership to support marketing. Again, you have the overhead from the manufacturer, but it's just not enough.
And I can see how important, Ilana, it is to, have these marketing systems and automation in place, especially with the pandemic or other things that are going on in the world, because then you're off and worried about other things that come up, right?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good point. Something I wanted to bring up that I forgot. So thank you. It's not just about having the infrastructure in place. It's actually about having the dynamic, flexible infrastructure in place, because some things are happening in the world, like the pandemic or like the inventory shortage, and your marketing infrastructure has to know how to respond to that. And if you don't have that type of infrastructure set up, then you're going to fall behind. So that's it. That's an excellent point.
What are people saying about the shortage? How is it affecting people when you're talking to them?
So it's interesting because it's also been a huge theme of our podcast this year. In the beginning, it was the same panic response that we got with COVID, which was shut down all marketing. There's no inventory. Little by little, dealers realized, wait, there's still competition. There's still demand. There's still branding that I need to put out there so people choose me over the dealer down the street. So how do I make my marketing just more efficient and my sales structure more efficient so that I can actually reach buyers? So it's been an interesting trend to watch because marketing is absolutely inevitable in order for dealers to be able to compete. And no one has inventory. So it's not like, the dealer down the street has more inventory than you. So you have to prove somehow that your dealership is the one that's going to get them their inventory in 3 months and give them the service that they want.
I have found in all industries, when people stop marketing, the other people eat their lunch because someone's going to keep marketing, right?
Yep, 100%.
So let's go to the next one. And you talked about recapping digital dealers' top panels with April Simmons. In this one, you talked a bit about creating authentic content at the dealership.
Yeah. April Simmons, wow. She provided so much information in that episode. I think it was one of our longer ones. She participated in 3 panels in Digital Dealer. So she gave us some insight into how that was. But the common theme was figure out your content and make sure that you have unique content for your dealership's brand. And also, this is the time, since you have, no negotiations going on the floor, obviously, because everyone's selling cars no matter what, because there's no inventory. So figure out a plan. So what April really spoke about was 2 things. One, getting buy-in at the store to make sure that your sales team and your marketing team and whoever's actually at the store understands the importance of having brand content and video content. So that was number 1. And then number 2 was set up a really easy system for them to actually support that. So what April did, which I think is just great practical advice, and that's why I want to reiterate it today on today's podcast. She basically hired someone who knows how to work TikTok, knows how to work Instagram, and had that person basically be the collector of all content. So if someone on the floor, if a salesperson who doesn't want to actually upload anything or edit anything to TikTok, but wants to take a quick, shot of something, they can send pictures and videos to this content person. And then that content person actually, uses that content and creates it into something really nice for the dealership. So that's just like one, practical tip that she gave among many others, but I thought it was a great takeaway for dealers.
Yeah, it sounds like, on the, what you guys do really automates the stuff, and they had kind of a system for content so they can easily deploy it and not make it, because, I imagine the salespeople, they don't want to mess around with uploading and creating descriptions. So like, it seemed like it was an easy system. Boom, take a picture, send to this person. They'll handle the rest of that system.
Exactly. And it also motivates them to just feed in that content to the person, because there's basically no work for them to do. They just have to, capture moments, if that, on the floor. So it's a nice, really easy way for dealers to get started on brand content.
Love it. The next one we're going to talk about is creating supply chain harmony. This goes kind of the shortage and creating supply chain harmony, encouraging innovation with Neil Ackerman. And this one, you did talk about the impact of shortages and a little bit about why not to pause marketing.
Yeah. So, wow, Neil Ackerman, he's super smart guy. And he has a ton of experience both at Amazon and at Johnson & Johnson. And his approach is specifically, he spoke mostly about Amazon, was about customer delight, and how as long as your system is customer centric, it almost doesn't matter what inventory you have, because your customer is always at the center. So figuring out how to create that communication and expectation, which is 100% relatable for our dealers, was really his main takeaway. And I think, especially in the year to come, this is going to be a huge focus for dealers, figuring out in every aspect of their infrastructure, how can we put the customer at the center, including with data even. How do I get all of my customer data and then translate that into something that I can create a really nice shopping experience for the customer? So it was just interesting to see how he talks about like the supply chain on Amazon and a Johnson & Johnson level. And we were able to kind of connect that to dealers and what they should be doing to be customer centric.
Yeah. I mean, you find the people at some of the most successful companies do exactly that. They're very customer centric. They're about the customer experience. I was talking to someone yesterday who was at Disney for 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
And those, when you talk about Amazon, Disney, Apple, like they have the customer at the forefront. So, and same thing is what you help the dealers do, right?
Yeah. I always think about Zappos, because I think someone once told me that like their entire business model is built off of just having the best customer service, to the point where you can call them and be like, hey, where's the closest grocery to my store, to my house right now? And like, they'll just look it up for you, because they're all about customer service. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah. I read the book or listened to the book, Delivering Happiness. And there are those like kind of folklore true stories in there where someone was on the phone with someone for 10 hours for some reason, like nothing to do with shoes, just other things, or ordered a pizza for someone. But like there's those folklore stories. So totally. That's probably why,
but at the end of the day, the message is the same.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons probably why Amazon bought them for $1 billion or whatever they bought them for. So The next one's building a people-based dealership and giving back to the community with Liza. Talk a little bit about culture. I know you talked a lot about culture here.
Yes. So that was another big theme, actually. So Liza really talked about how she built a people-first culture, which I think, while it sounds trivial, is absolutely not, especially in the dealership world. So really figuring out how to, create a family-first environment, create a volunteer environment, a community environment, making sure that all the values are in place before you even onboard someone so that they have the motivation to work at the dealership. And this has come up, quite a bit in our podcast. I had a similar conversation with Maria from PCG Digital, who's also on one of the episodes this year, who went from automotive retail. So she worked at a big dealer group to the vendor space, the technology space. And one of the things she mentioned was that there was zero flexibility at the dealership. Like she was working weekends, she was working 7-day weeks. She couldn't, pick up kids there. She couldn't work from home. And so dealers really need to focus on how to create a people first environment, or else they're going to lose their talent. And also, there's so many technology companies out there, especially in auto, that are looking for that talent and looking for the dealer experience. So dealerships really have to put this in place in order to keep talent. So it was a little bit of a different conversation. We usually talk more about technology, but I loved this episode because it was eye-opening, and I think it was really helpful for dealers that are looking to build this kind of community-based dealership.
Have you heard any tidbits from her or other people about what are some of the specific things they do, maybe as team building or as a company, to help with that morale or culture?
This year, less about team building, but more about, implementing maternity leave, paternity leave. Of course, there are team building things, making sure that if someone was actually, this is Corona specific, but if someone was at quarantine at home, what is the team doing for them? Are they sending them something? Just like little things like that tech companies actually, I think, really embed in their culture that dealerships didn't always necessarily do. Another one was Matt Raymond, who spoke about how they centralized their marketing to make it more efficient, but in turn, it also created a way for them to be way more efficient at home and work from home, and it gave them way more flexibility. Little things like that will transform the way that people work at dealerships. That's what's going to keep the talent at dealers.
Yeah, keeping the technology in the forefront allows people to be flexible, because then they can get in stuff that they had to go into, they can kind of do from their phone or their computer.
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah.
So the next one is AutoNation Senior Director of Digital E-commerce, Brian Free. And Brian talked a little bit about kind of reputation management.
Yes. So, Brian is a wealth of knowledge. He started at AutoNation, which is, the number one dealer group in the nation. He started there as maybe their 10th or 15th employee. And he mastered SEO as part of his marketing strategy. But the other thing that he mastered, which also comes up a lot, is just reputation management. So figuring out how to not only get the good reviews, but actually turn that into just like gold for your marketing, whether that be to optimize for SEO or to figure out how to turn those reviews into things that show up on the website or ads. And he just gave so much insight into how it helped them, especially during the pandemic in the beginning, when they did tune down their advertising budget. They didn't turn it off. They toned it down a bit. So their SEO was able to kind of balance that and bring just the amount of traffic, if not more. And it was all thanks to this like amazing reputation management system that he put in place, as well as the SEO, of course, they put in place.
Love it. The next one is to BDC or not to BDC and the other automated process tips from Brian Kramer. And with Brian, you talked about, again, kind of on that digital front and going paperless.
Yes. So Brian Kramer from Germain Auto, he's been everywhere this year. Actually, I've seen so many interviews. And one of the most impressive things that he's put in place is going almost paperless at the dealership, which again sounds trivial, but it's actually extremely difficult because of the federal and state ink laws that make it so difficult for people to actually buy their car. Like there's so much red tape in automotive that prevents it. So it's not necessarily that the technology is not there. It's also figuring out how to like get around the red tape or figure out a way to be creative to create that process and make it available for shoppers, which is 100%, way more efficient and productive and shoppers will want that. First of all, it saves paper, but also it's just way faster. So he talked a lot about that. He did a lot of research in Florida about how he can kind of get around it, and then how others can also learn from him, which I think is a huge part here, right? It's not just about Jermaine. He's really trying to spread the word and help others. This is a tremendous leap for automotive, a tremendous leap, because I actually remember when I first moved to Miami and I was trying to buy a car or lease a car, and I can't remember. Oh, I didn't have a car. So I didn't go to the dealership because I was trying to lease a car. And I did everything on the phone. And then the guy goes, okay, you just need to come in. I need you to sign this thing. And I was like, you can't send it to me in a PDF, like online. And he was like, no, it's ink laws. It's this, that. And it broke the deal. Like I didn't end up doing it. And in the end, it was a really ugly car. So it was a blessing in disguise. But I just couldn't believe, like, think about my story, think about how many others, it totally broke the deal. I was like, you know what? Never mind. I'm not coming.
Yeah. And there's so many easy technologies to do that. And I remember I had experience with, I went in to get my car, some maintenance on my car, and I got out, the person had an iPad, literally just had me, they took a couple pictures. They basically had me sign. It was like the best customer experience, all streamlined. I just did it right there, all digital. And it was done in like a couple minutes. It was amazing.
Dealership? You could give them a little shout out here.
Yeah, it was an Audi dealership in Chicago. I don't have that car anymore. It was an old car that I bought used, but it was an Audi dealership. I think it's in Northbrook or Highland Park.
All right, we'll look it up.
It was amazing. I mean, I had never experienced that kind of technology. So from the opposite side, the customer experience, you're wild because other people are doing it in more of an archaic way. So it's like the differential was huge in my mind.
Yeah, totally.
So the next one we have is switching from vanity metrics to metrics that matter with Bob Lanham. And with Bob, you talked about, tracking metrics that matter.
Yeah. So Bob also has, been everywhere in the past year, and he talks a lot about making sure that you have the proper metrics in place and you're not just reporting on metrics that really don't matter. So for example, impressions and clicks, while that used to be exciting, that's not exciting anymore because you want to know your leads, or you want to know your cost per lead, and you want to know how efficient your marketing is when it comes to leads rather than impressions. But what he really focuses on is actually the mixed media model. That's what he calls it, where it's basically making sure that a dealership can actually take every single piece of marketing that they're investing in, digital, traditional, anything, and then take the total amount of leads and just understand from a macro perspective what your cost per lead is. And so, we talked a lot about that on this episode, and I find that it's critical because when we talk to dealers, everyone has a different system for calculating their leads or calculating their cost per lead or their ROI. And as an industry, we have to streamline that. So there's like two parts here. The first part is know how to actually, get the proper ROI on your marketing. But then of course, can we as an industry streamline that so that if you do go from one technology to another, it's easy for you to compare and see the improvement and the performance.
Talk about a little bit, on that note, a little bit about AutoLeadstar and how that helps dealers as far as the kind of the metrics go.
Yeah. So at AutoLeadstar, there's two things, and I'm happy you brought this up. One is that AutoLeadstar really focuses on consolidating more of the data so that the actual calculation of marketing is more accurate. So what's happening in automotive right now is a dealer will invest in, let's say, a chat program and an SEM provider. So you're sending traffic to your site, and then on your site, you have something else that's trying to convert that traffic to leads. When that happens, you have totally disjointed information and you can't actually track a shopper from A to Z. So one of the things that AutoLeads is doing to solve for that challenge is just having more of the customer data and experience be in one place so that it's easy for you to track. That's number one. And then number two is owning your data. So actually giving the dealers access to all the data and making sure that they can track anything that they want, which outside of automotive is obviously, an acceptable concept, but in automotive, not everyone actually has access to all their data. So what I mean by that is not every dealer will own their Google Ads account or own their Facebook account. And that gives them way less visibility into their data. And then, you don't even have control over what's happening with your marketing budget and certainly your marketing ROI.
Love it. Yeah. Thanks for, because you help people with their entire marketing funnel, right? With the software.
Yeah. Slowly but surely we've made our way through the entire funnel. We started just on the website and now we try to cover everything. Also because we saw the challenge, which is that the industry is so disjointed, there was no one solution, one platform. So that was part of what pushed us to develop that.
Love it. The next one is Jim Ziegler.
Yes.
And he talked about a little bit about incorporating technology.
Yes.
So talk about that in the dealership processes.
So Jim Ziegler has been around in automotive for a really long time. He's extremely entertaining. I was very honored to have him on the podcast. He trains a lot of dealers. He used to be a dealer himself. And, his main point is that one, you have to evolve, but also technologies need to understand where dealers are at. So it's important for that to be played, hand in hand. And Jim wasn't the only one to bring this up. April Simmons, who we already spoke about, brought this up. Many other dealers that were on the podcast with us brought this up as well, that there's people, process, and technology, and all three need to work together. So bringing in a technology that's going to completely ruin a dealer's process isn't going to be successful. And then bringing in people that's going to ruin a technology's process is also not going to be successful. And so he's all about adapting, but all about also understanding where the dealerships are at now and how to kind of bring that all together. And he has some training platforms. They're linked here. I know not everyone watches this, so not everyone can see the screen, but in the show notes, we'll put it there again.
It's a Ziegler Super Systems. There's an Alpha Dog website, which is a ZieglerOnDemand.com.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And so he has some stuff there, and it's really helpful, especially for people who find it a little bit harder to adapt to technology. I think he's really trying to help those just because he comes from a similar place, because he's been in the industry for a really long time. And so there's a fine balance between, keeping your tradition and adopting technology.
When I was looking through the episodes, Ilana, this one stuck out because he's wearing a big Alpha Dog hat. Yeah. And is there a story behind that? Did he tell a story behind?
He did tell a story. He told the story behind the name Alpha Dog. That's how we started the podcast. But I won't ruin it for you. Everyone should go and listen because he is way more entertaining than I would be in telling the story.
Awesome. Check out that. Thank you for sharing all the lessons learned and more to come. Check out more episodes at InsideAutoPodcast.com. You can find all the episodes there. And you can go to AutoLeadstar to learn more about the software. Anywhere else we should point people online, Ilana, to learn more?
No, that's about it. Please tune in. You can listen to us on all your favorite podcast streaming outlets.
They have some of the top leaders in auto, and this was fantastic. Thanks, Ilana.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for listening to Inside Auto Podcast. Check out our other episodes with top entrepreneurs and industry leaders.